Welcome back, Wrestling Fluency community, to another episode. I am the Alabama Slammer Brandie, and I am here today with my co-host,
$1 Million Matt.
How you doing?
All right. How about yourself, Brandie?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a long day, man.
Oh yeah, I feel you on that, and I'm getting back from a 3-day weekend, and fun fact today, well, actually Friday, folks, $1 Million Matt turned 38.
Yay! Happy birthday, $1 Million Man!
Woohoo! I was gonna say, feel free to throw a happy birthday in the comments down below. I would greatly appreciate it.
I thought I saw that you went out for your birthday, like went out to dinner.
Actually, I went out to lunch with a few friends of mine who I haven't seen in a while. We caught up for a little bit. We had a few. We had some lunch, and then my dad made me dinner and made me a really delicious pork chop.
Oh.
Yep.
You and your dad have had a good time this month. You went on a father-son kind of trip together, and then the birthday stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep. I actually went out to Pittsburgh, and that is actually my first time visiting the city.
Yeah, it looked like you had a good time.
Oh yeah, and I strongly recommend it. And in fact, as one of the sites, definitely do the Riverwalk. It is worth it, especially if the weather's beautiful. You just feel the wind just radiating off you as you're walking, and you're looking at the bridges, and you're also looking at the incline, which is definitely going to be another thing that I experience next time I get into the city. I haven't had time since I spent a weekend there, so yeah, it was a good time. I enjoyed myself.
Didn't run into Britt Baker anywhere, did you?
I wish.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, that would have been awesome, being in Pittsburgh.
Well, man, this episode is one that we've been really excited to talk about. It's going to be about the steroid trial from the 90s.
Oh, yeah, a very controversial topic that is still being talked about to this day.
We were talking earlier that it's interesting. We had a meeting a few months ago, maybe a month or two now, where we really sat down and figured out some episodes we wanted to do and the order we wanted to do them and stuff. And the steroid trial was one we really wanted to do, we were really interested in. And we were talking about other legal things that the WWE had. And there were a couple of things that had come out. Of course, there was the concussion stuff at one point, the Jimmy Snuka stuff. But like at that current time, there wasn't really anything really recent. And then so we're going to talk about Vince McMahon in this trial. And lo and behold, if Vinnie Mac isn't in hot water again with the legal.
Yep. And it basically involves him throwing in that hush money in the bank. Shut it what you drink.
Hush money in the bank. Oh, man. So we here at Wrestling Fluency believe in the whole you are innocent until proven guilty. But it is also, it gives you cause for pause because, like, they come out, they made this statement, they let it be known that he's being investigated and stuff like that. So it's a really big deal. And you kind of look at it like, is there truth to this? Because when a company comes out like that, you're kind of like, oh man, this might hold some water. Or was the person going to like release a tell-all and they're just trying to get ahead of it? Just, it's interesting. Johnny Ace is all tied up in it.
Oh yeah, he definitely got thrown under the bus, and I don't know how much involvement he has, but the tea has definitely been spilled.
Yeah, essentially, the story that I've heard is that the person in question was a paralegal, and they were having some kind of affair with Vince McMahon, and they got like money, kind of hush money. Yeah. And then once he was done having an affair, she was then passed to Laurinaitis. And a lot of people are assuming, because her friend put out, I believe it's a she, but I'm not sure. I can't clarify that for sure. But a friend of the accuser said that they were passed from Vince McMahon and then given to Johnny Ace. And so that could just mean that they were set up and put there, and nothing inappropriate happened between Johnny Ace and the person, or it could mean a little more than that. We don't know. Johnny Ace is also a married man. He's married to the Bella Twins' mom, so this is like a double the trouble scandal.
Yeah, it's definitely not looking good for either one, whether it be Vinnie Mac or Johnny Ace. But
Definitely.
like we're advocating, it's innocent until proven guilty, until the actual truth comes out. So until then, we'll just stay in the wings and we'll stay posted on it from anyone who can provide information for that.
We will eagerly await the results of the ongoing investigation.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Matt, Vinnie Mac, this is not his first time he's been in legal hot water. He was in a shitstorm in the 90s when it came to the steroid trial. And we're going to get into it. But before we start, I want to throw it over to you. I'd like you to explain what is a steroid and what are some of the side effects?
All right. So, for those that don't know what a steroid is, it is a synthetic steroid hormone that resembles testosterone in promoting the growth of muscle. Such hormones are used medicinally to treat some forms of weight loss and illegally used by some athletes and others to enhance physical performance. And here are some of the side effects. And a few of the side effects that I'm naming off, it is increased appetite. There's also weight gain, changes in mood, a lot of mood swings and all that. Some muscle weakness, blurred vision, increased growth of body hair, easy bruising, and lower resistance to infection. And there's probably many others. And I would just like to say for the record, we're not doctors or medical professionals. So any more symptoms you care to look up in case you're curious, feel free to Google. But that's just the surface stuff for now, for the time being, just the meat and potatoes of it.
Interesting. Now, steroids are used from time to time when you're sick, like if you've got swollen glands or something, steroids are used. I wonder if these are different.
Yeah, I think from what I looked up, Brandie, there's all different kinds of steroids. And I was looking them up earlier just for shits and giggles, and I was just like, holy cow, there's a lot of this stuff I cannot pronounce. So I am not gonna put that on air and get myself all tongue tied and twisted.
Mm-hmm. I understand. So historically, these specific steroids, what were they being used for during like the 80s and 90s?
They were mostly used to make a lot of the wrestlers appear and seem bigger because they were using that for a lot of the marketing strategy. Because back then in the 80s and 90s, if you notice with wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, these guys look like comic book characters, like fresh off of a Marvel or DC comic, and looked larger than life. So it was mostly for a marketing strategy and mostly to sell merchandise.
Yeah, now I don't think I know. In the past, I've heard a lot of people talk about Vince McMahon always had, like, he wanted guys to be really big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wasn't a big fan of the smaller bodied people in wrestling.
So Hulk Hogan was the big thing back in the 80s and was also the key witness to the whole steroid trial, according to the prosecution.
Yeah, and from what I'm to understand, he was originally granted immunity. Like, he wasn't going to have to talk during this at all.
Yep, and he was granted immunity. One of the people on McMahon's defense team who granted him immunity and was part of it was McMahon's personal lawyer, Jerry McDevitt.
Yeah. Now let's back it up a second. So it came down, all of a sudden the steroid thing was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like cutting down on it in Olympic sports. Is that right? Like Olympic sports and then football and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and in
And then they
fact,
got tipped
Brandie.
off about WWE. Is that right?
Yep, and in fact, from what I understand, quite a few Olympic athletes had to give up their gold medals when they were being investigated for steroids and were disqualified.
Holy smokes. It was like
Yep,
it was a real problem going on at the time where
yep.
pretty much every athlete was on them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that was the big thing back then, and that was to look bigger or be faster or be stronger. It was just one of those things where if you wanted a leg up, you took steroids.
So how did Vince get pulled into it? Now I know there's the whole situation where the doctor that was doing it, they were able to find where he was like FedExing different wrestlers steroids. And so I guess that's how Vince got pulled into it.
Yep, and that doctor is named Dr. Zahorian.
Thank
And
you. I knew it was a Z name, but I couldn't remember it.
yep, and he was actually a doctor during the events that WWF at the time would hold in little old Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is less than an hour away from me.
Oh, wow. Matt, so close to the scandal.
Yeah, ooh, Scandal Town.
So during this time, Hogan was like getting accused of it, and they had found a whole bunch of FedEx situations where he had been sent several packages. And then I think what got Vince like really wrapped up in it is his secretary or something said that she had delivered a package of testosterone, not testosterone, but steroids. Like he had forced her to or something like that.
Right, and that's correct. Yep, it seems like that she had some involvement in it, especially to delivering steroids and then having them distribute them to the wrestlers.
Yikes. Legalized drug dealer.
Yeah.
So, from what I'm to understand, during this time, the person that was prosecuting, like on the prosecuting side, had like a freaking hard-on for Vince McMahon and really wanted to take him down. And also something about a journalist like kept writing terrible things about Vince McMahon, and that really helped spur on that he was going to have to go to court for this.
Yep, and I know the name of that writer, and I believe he wrote for a New York Post. His name was Phil Mishnick.
You know what's interesting is that we discussed in the history of wrestling how the papers really turned against wrestling back in like the 30s and was like or maybe it was the 50s. They were blowing it out the water that it was a scripted sport. I was like, journalists have not been kind to Vince McMahon's business.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
Journalists may be the heels. They may be the heels in the wrestling world.
Yeah, and honestly, some of them, especially the ones that are sandbaggers, that they're also the heels, especially ones that basically put out these stories with no facts.
Yeah, that's true. I just really remember people talking about how that one reporter, and he's on the Dark Side of the Ring episode talking, and they said that he just like kept writing stuff about Vince McMahon. Now, as someone who formerly was going to school, I've gone to school a long time for a lot of different things, but my first degree that I was working on way back in the day was I wanted to be a journalist and I wanted to be a writer, and so I understand, having written for a wrestling website before, they want the dirt. They want the tea. They want things that are going to outrage people because they know that you're going to get clicks that way. So I sympathize with him.
Right, and a lot of them, for the most part, just want to get the truth out.
Yeah,
especially a good journalist too.
It doesn't feel good. Like, just speaking from experience, when I was covering like matches and giving opinion pieces on storylines and stuff like that, I was living my best life. I loved it. But when we had a staff meeting and we were told that we needed to start working more towards writing things that were more TMZ-like. I was like, I don't like this at all. And
Yeah.
I remember I wrote one article, and it was probably my most popular article. It got shared around. It made it all the way to the person it was about. And that felt horrible to write a gossipy article.
Yeah.
It felt horrible. And I was like, I will never do this again. And I quit working for the company that day. But it is something that journalists are pushed to do.
Oh yeah, I don't blame you. Just like the bigger the story, I guess the bigger the check.
Yeah. Well, like I remember when all of this was going around, the wrestler it was about had said was going through a really hard time, and I was like, oh man. And their mom tweeted about it. And I remember being in that staff meeting thinking I was going to get in trouble. And the person who owned it was like, no, we love it. We're getting so much traffic and so many interactions. This has been our biggest article. And I was like, I feel like a horrible person.
Yeah. It's almost like the world of Instagram, just doing whatever it takes to get likes and all that. And it's just like, dude, wow, you're making a career out of someone's life.
Yeah, well, in 2022 here at Wrestling Fluency, we believe in building community on commonality, not on shock value, and not on hateful things. So they can keep it. We don't want it.
Yep, exactly. We don't. In the words of AJ Styles' theme song, we don't want none.
That's right. So, Vinnie Mac and the Steroid Trial. They get to trial, and I loved seeing the footage of Vince McMahon getting out of his car, and he's wearing that neck brace.
Yes.
Vince McMahon, the planner, ever the showman, had that allegedly had a neck surgery, and that's why he had the neck brace.
Right, and part of what some people will say is that he was just trying to play to the jury for a sympathy card.
Mm-hmm. See, now, like back then, it wouldn't have been like as played out as it is today, like coming to court and wearing the neck brace thing. But now, like in 2022, watching back the stuff, it's really funny. And Vince's interviews where he's like sitting there and he's seriously PBS talking, or not even PBS. He sounds like one of those announcers that used to announce like the the news show with the older gentleman. He was like,
oh yeah,
good night and God bless, or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, like a regular TV broadcaster for the news.
He sounded like an old
He had his regular TV for the newscaster news type voice.
Yes. And he would be like cutting these promos. I'm like, Vince McMahon is cutting promos in the middle of his trial.
Yeah, right in the middle of his testimony. It's just like, dude, it's not a wrestling promo.
I know, but he like would do that show on TV. It's crazy. But so during all of this, a number of different people came to the trial. Ultimate Warrior was one.
Yeah.
And Ultimate Warrior was very open about the fact that Vince McMahon did not do that stuff, and that it was he called it a witch hunt. I'm pretty sure is how he described it.
Right. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, too, I didn't have too much knowledge on it, but I know Ravishing Rick Rude was one of the people that were called to testify against McMahon.
Mm-hmm. And so the trial's going on, and Vince McMahon's lawyer, who I think may still be affiliated with him to this day, I'm not quite sure. I didn't really understand that at the end there. But he was learning, in the meantime, just learning everything he could about steroids. And at some point, he comes to the realization that the FDA knew that these were not safe for humans to be using, and suggested they be pulled, but never followed through with them being pulled. So these people, and I'd like to say, they were totally legal at the time. The time Hogan, Rude, all them, the time all these people were using them, they were completely legal. And it was actually the FAA, or is it FAA or FFA? FDA.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's FDA actually. I
I'm
think
thinking
you
about
had
the
I was gonna
aviation.
say I think you had it right the first time there, Brand.
FAA is aviation. I'm sorry. I do work with aviation stuff, so I deal with
Right,
FFA
right.
or FAA all the time. But the FDA, it was their mistake that it didn't get pulled.
Yep.
And that actually wound up being what won the case for Vince, was that the jury, like Vince's lawyer, introduced the fact that, hey, this is what happened. Like, if these were so bad, why did the FDA even failed to pull them off? These were legal to do at the time. And the jury sent a little note over to the judge, like, is that true that the FDA is at fault for not pulling it? And the prosecution tried so hard to get that, or tell the judge not to answer them, but the judge did answer them, and I'm pretty sure most of the jurors admitted that that was the big thing that kind of was the saving grace. How can you punish someone for doing something that was legal? Now, was it necessarily ethical or nice of Vince McMahon to be like, you're too skinny, you need to bulk up, take this medicine? Well, no, it wasn't. But
Yeah.
it wasn't illegal either, and the jury and courts decide what is legal or not legal. And sometimes it's not always what's nice or not nice.
Yep, exactly. And I was going to touch too. Oh, bless you. I was going to say at the time too, Brandy, steroids were as legal as taking an aspirin.
Oh, that legal. So they were incredibly common.
Yep, as like prescribing aspirin or some kind of cough medicine, or to this day, when you actually get a steroid to treat a cold.
I had to take steroids recently, and I will tell you, I don't know if they're like similar, but I was so hungry the whole time I took steroids. I was like, I'm so hungry. Feed me
Oh,
more.
Henry. Oh yeah, Alabama Slammer went Ryback for a minute.
Oh my gosh. But so at the end of the day, Vince McMahon was found not guilty. And actually, Hogan came in and did testify, even though he was giving immunity and it wasn't supposed to have to. He still came in. And this is even after he's gone from the WWE.
Mm-hmm. Yep, around that time, I believe he was contracted under WCW.
Oh, yeah. This must have been like right at the beginning of the NWO.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's did he admit on the stand that he took them?
I I think if I'm not mistaken, Brandy, he was prescribed steroids for medical reasons, and also stating in the testimony that,
Um,
yep, and on top of that too, not only did he get the steroids from Dr. Sahorian, but he also got his fan mail and paychecks along with those steroids that were FedEx to him.
Yeah, I remember now. Hogan said that he was taking them because he and his wife were having a hard time conceiving a child, and he
Uh,
was like letting it on that it was because his testosterone was too low or something like that.
that's right. That's right.
I do remember that being the excuse. But
Yep,
Vinnie Mac, saved by the Hulkster. Hulkster
yep.
had his back. And I think that's why to this day, Vince McMahon will still always have love for Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan will always get a pass because he saved Vince McMahon during that trial, or helped save him during that trial.
Yep, the Hulkster saved Vinnie Mac's bacon.
Now, this is one thing that they mentioned on Dark Side of the Ring that I didn't realize had like an effect on this, but because of steroids being outlawed and Vince coming under the scrutiny of being someone who was only liking the bigger looking guys and telling them to get bigger, all of a sudden he started pushing more realistic looking smaller guys, and that's when you started seeing the rise of Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Yep, and those were mostly smaller guys and all that, and they were being pushed to the forefront, and even guys like Mr. Perfect.
Oh, Mr. Perfect.
Yep, old Kurt Hennig. And I was gonna say I'll throw out another point of a wrestler at that time who actually had a controversy. I don't know if you remember this wrestler, the Kona Crusher from Hawaii, Crush.
Yeah.
And yep, and also first character I used in the Royal Rumble Super NES video game, but that's another story for another time. Back to Crush. So Crush was actually arrested and fired by the WWF at one point because of his possession of steroids and marijuana in Hawaii. So he was later removed because as a kid, I was like, what happened to Crush? And then I'm not sure if I heard later on down the road he was fired, but I was just like, oh, geez,
That's crazy.
that stinks.
You know, in recent years, of course, like WWE was the one who did the flagship, like the first company. Vince McMahon came out with the press conference and was like, we're going to be like the gold standard when it comes to testing for drugs and these kind of things. And so actually a lot of combat sports and a lot of sports now have programs that are based off of the format that Vince and them created. And even to this day, we've had some big name people pop. The first one I think of off the top of my head who popped for a steroid was indeed Brock Lesnar.
Yep, that's right.
Now, I think that maybe he had to pay a little fine or something because it became one of those things that it was prescribed to him. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was steroids or some kind of human growth hormone. I'm not sure. I don't know what all you men folk do. I don't know what y'all taking over there.
Yeah. And I was going to say, once again, we're not medical professionals, but if there are medical professionals, please educate us in the comments.
Yeah. We will just say that in recent years, Brock Lesnar popped for a athletic enhancement drug. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that it has happened.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Even in the years since.
Yep, many years later.
I think that with, like, marijuana and stuff like that, if you pop for that, you can get away with a fine. But if you pop for anything that's a prescription drug, you wind up having to, like, be suspended for so many days and stuff.
Yeah, you pay a slight consequence. Maybe a little suspension, like a few months suspension, or without pay, etc., and so forth.
So it's really safe to say that the steroid trial changed drug testing in professional sports in general.
Oh, yeah, it definitely did. And I was going to say, back to the point of Olympic athletes losing their gold medal, I actually looked this up, Brandie, and it's a little off topic, but I feel like this needs to be known. But there was an Olympic athlete who was known as the fastest guy alive. He was on the Canadian Olympic team, and he actually lost his gold medal in Seoul, South Korea during the Olympic Games.
So recently?
No, this was actually back in 1988.
Okay. I was just thinking a few years ago it was in Seoul.
Yeah, his name was Ben Johnson. Yep. I was gonna say, look him up when you get a chance. But he actually appeared in Dark Side of the Ring. There was like a little clip of a news article that he actually had his gold medal stripped from him.
Now, was it for steroids or was this?
Yeah, it was for steroids. Because I was actually looking up some information, and there's a few times where he got disqualified.
Oh, so how do you think that has significantly changed, like, sports now, or do you think they just found workarounds for it?
I think it's a little balance of both. I think there's blurred lines between it. I mean, there might be some people using steroids for certain things. I was going to say, I know in bodybuilding, they might still be using it, or they might have outlawed it. I could be wrong. I'm not that active into the bodybuilding world and who's like the guy or the girl in bodybuilding.
I'm pretty sure it's outlawed in all competitive, at least in the U.S. competitive
right
like that.
Yeah, or they might find some kind of way sort of similar to steroids. I know they definitely use it in bodybuilding because I see people more jacked than they should be. I'm like,
I had heard.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Matt. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, it's all good. But I was just getting ready to make a point saying there's people having muscles that I didn't think they had muscles in, but maybe that's just me.
Muscles on top of muscles. Yeah. I had read, and this is during the time that Brock was getting popped, is that there's, and I don't know if it's a steroid or if it's testosterone or what, but there's like some kind of enhancement drug that they give it to you, and then before you have to like get drug tested to compete, they give you something else to kind of bring down your levels so that they can't see.
Yeah, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's TRT, if I'm not mistaken.
Which, I mean, isn't TRT like sometimes just prescribed for men who are aging and have lower testosterone?
Yes, I believe it's to kind of build up your testosterone. And
so it is a therapeutic drug.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of research on it. As you guys know, I'm a little bit older. I'm close to 40, so it's something that I'm looking into.
Yeah, a lot of older or people who are in their like 40s, 50s, 60s really say that it helps. That my dad is 60 something and he got a prescription for testosterone, and it just helped him just feel better.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. It gives you that kind of new stimulation or new just like breath of life.
Like, as long as it's being controlled by a doctor, and I don't think anybody's out here like, well, I don't know, I can't say that. I don't know how people are using it. I don't have to worry about testosterone in really a lot. But I feel like if it can be responsibly controlled by a doctor, let them. And I feel like some of the, maybe even was AJ Styles or someone else like that, had like a situation where maybe they were popped and that it went away because it wound up being that it was just their testosterone they had been given by their doctors. So I'm here to say, normalize men wanting to feel better in their older age by having properly balanced hormones. We are pro balanced hormones in this place.
Yep, exactly. But also on that note too, before you take anything, even if it's prescribed by a doctor, make sure you do your research and make sure it doesn't have any kind of effects to where you're going to have some issues down the road.
Yeah, you for sure want to see someone who specializes in it. See an endocrinologist, I know like for women, there's like specific GYN doctors that do the, see people who specialize in hormones, because it's just a lot better than your GP. No offense to the GPs out there, but
none at all.
An endocrine doctor, that's what they do all day, every day. They take a lot more training in it. So.
Yep, exactly. In the immortal words of Mark Henry, that's what they do.
That's what they do. Well, it's interesting. Yeah. What a tangent we got off on here, where we're telling people to see their doctors.
Yeah, exactly.
None of this is medical advice.
Yep, exactly. And I'm going to say it again. We're not medical professionals.
No, you do not want us. No, ma'am. Yep. You do not want us being your doctors.
Yep. Dr. Brandie.
Dr. Brandie. There are some things health-wise I could probably talk to you about, but I will not.
Yep.
Well.
Yep. Dr. Brandie, Dr. $1 Million Matt.
No, thank you. I'd be one of those people that, like, if my name was Dr. Brandie, it would be like I'd have a doctorate in like philosophy or some shit like that.
Right, exactly.
Like an MD.
Yep. Or you could be the DMD, like Dr. Brandie.
Yeah, but that's still a legit medical doctor. It's just
yeah. Just
like,
throwing in a little humor there.
Like doctorates, when like Ross on Friends, he's a doctor of paleontology.
right.
Which is an amazing achievement. It takes a lot to achieve that. But there's an episode where someone's like, I need a doctor, and Ross, I think, had just introduced himself as Dr. Geller, and he's like, no, not that kind of doctor. I would like to get a doctorate, and just because it could be doctor. But I actually already have a title, Matt, if you didn't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have 2 official titles. Well, I was the queen at my Ren Fair in my area, so I'm not the queen anymore. You only get to be queen a year, but I am forever known as a duchess by our city's Ren Fair. But I am also an ordained minister, so I am the Reverend.
That's right. You did tell me you're an ordained minister. That is amazing.
I am the Reverend.
Yep. So is a friend of mine who also watches Wrestling Fluency recently. But you know who you are, buddy.
Hello,
We're we're
fellow
we're,
reverend.
we're yep, we're acknowledging you here at
We are
Wrestling Fluency.
acknowledging.
Acknowledge me.
Well, so there have been some other. So the wellness policy that we all know and love came about because of this trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and
it was a blueprint for other places' wellness policy.
yep, and it really changed the game for not only sports entertainment but also sports in general. I know a lot of times UFC will do their drug testing policy, and if I'm not mistaken, I know one of the fighters, and he was actually one of my favorite fighters at the time, still is to this day. John Jones, he actually got popped for a few
Oh.
things. I, I'm not sure if it was anything like steroid influence or if it was marijuana, but something to that effect. And like I said, I don't know all the facts to it, but that's just from what I come to understand. But it really come making full circle to it. It really changed the game for a lot of sports and all to crack down on people abusing drugs.
Now, are there any people that have popped positive on the drug thing that you were just totally shocked that they did?
Uh, I was gonna say some I'm actually not surprised by. If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Who were you not surprised by?
I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if maybe I wouldn't be surprised if Triple H definitely didn't pop steroids or anything like that because at one point, and I could be getting my timelines confused too, Brandie. I think it was around maybe like the 2008s, 2009s, a little bit around the time where one of my favorite video games, SmackDown or SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, where he was definitely looking more jacked than usual.
Mm-hmm. I remember that era. So Tanya loved Triple H. Like he
Yep.
was Bay all day for her. And
Oh, I did too. Yeah, Triple H was dope,
yeah. So
especially Evolution Triple H.
if you remember when he had his comeback and he came back and his physique was just insane, he
Yeah.
did a photo shoot for one of the WWE magazines where he's like standing in front of this Jeep that was like over her bed when we were teenagers. Wow. But I remember looking at him and being like, how can a human being's bicep be that huge?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just wonder, like, how do they wipe their butts?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, but like John Cena. John Cena has no wrist. Like he has like Popeye arms and these little hands.
His wrist is huge.
Yeah, and I'm just like, John, how do you reach your butt?
I was going to say another one too, Brandie, that I'd like to mention that I can say I'm not surprised by is the uncle of Braun Breaker, Scott Steiner.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't know how true this is, but my dad used to tell me that when you looked at a jacked up guy like that and their nipples were white like that, that was steroids.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure if I can back up that fact or anything, but I know for a fact that his freaking biceps look like freaking basketballs.
Yeah. And when Jinder Mahal came back, there was a lot of speculation about his body. And actually, one of my friends who used to do, one of my very best friends used to do competitive body, but what is it? Where they go and they do the pose. Bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding.
Yeah, bodybuilding, and I was gonna say physique modeling too.
Yeah. Well, he used to do that, and we were watching Jinder Mahal, and there was a point that he came back and he looked like a certain way, and then he started looking a little different over time. And my friend was like, and that's how I know that he was taking enhancements because and he was like talking about his chest or something. He's like, you can tell because this starts happening when you stop taking them. And I was like,
yeah.
My friend was like very devout of the whole, like, no, it's like anyone can take juice and get big. It's all about like what your body can naturally do. So.
Oh yeah, definitely, and you can tell definitely with a lot of superstars where their bodies are a lot more bigger than usual, and as I mentioned earlier, muscles on top of muscles.
Yeah.
That looks a little sus.
I used to wonder how some of the women got so big.
Oh,
like China, how China got so ripped.
Oh yeah, definitely. But
Nicole Bass, how did she get so ripped?
oh yeah, definitely. And wasn't there one in WCW that was kind of like their rendition of China? I can't think of their name.
Yeah, her name was Asia.
Oh yeah, that's right, Asia. Oh
Yeah,
my
she
God,
was
I'm showing my age here. Holy cow, I am showing my age here. Yeah,
It was
but
a weird time.
oh yeah, that was a strange time.
It's like, how are y'all so jacked? Because
Yeah.
they were jacked in like a more hardcore way. Like Rhea Ripley, for instance. Rhea Ripley is jacked. She is like, her physique is whoa. You know, Frankie Monet was the same way, like pretty jacked.
Oh yeah.
So there have been women recently in WWE that have had very strong woman, very
Oh yeah.
very Valkyrie, very
Yep.
shield maiden warrior. Look.
And I'll give you another good example of that. The EST. She is strong, but she is. But
her physique is fierce.
Yeah, but her physique is amazing. It's feminine, but it's also strong.
She's just cute as a button, not just
yeah, yeah. I love me some. I love me some EST and Montez Ford. You are a lucky son of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
She's just adorable too.
Oh yeah.
But like you can look at them that we've named right now and understand how. Yeah, I could totally see how they got there. But back in the 80s and 90s, some of the women that came out, I was like, I do not understand how you got that jacked.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't get it either. Unless they've been doing it their whole lives out the womb and all.
I don't know. I don't know anything about that world. I am obviously not too familiar with the fitness world.
Yeah, me neither. Although I am very active in the gym.
You are. You always be at the gym.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting older and I'm just trying to keep myself in shape.
Yeah, gotta tune it up.
Yep, definitely.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I think we've come to a good stopping point. Is there anything else you want to say before we head out, Matt?
Now, Brandie, I was going to say you can take it on home.
All right. Well, we hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode of Wrestling Fluency. Let us know what you think about all this in the comments below. We would love to speak with you.